Hi everybody, this is David, and we are out on my back porch slab. Actually have a screened-in porch right here, but in back of me is actually some parkland that we butt up against, and then this is our backyard. And my daughters are having kind of a joint birthday party on Sunday, so we'll have game stuff set up back here, and we're going to set a tent up in a week. My oldest daughter is having a sleepover, so we'll have a tent back here. I'm not sure if purple goes with gray, but that's what it is for the moment. I wanted to wear a shirt that I hadn't worn before for a fireside chat. So we don't have a fire. Hopefully we won't have one, because if we do, that means I'm having to call 911. I do have steel siding, so I think I'm in pretty good shape as far as if any loose embers get away from my neighbors grilling out here. So a few things. One, maybe more than a few, but I'm going to try to make this one more concise than the last one. I am going to open up modules 5, 6, and 7 today. So those will all be open. Everything from now to the end of the class will be open. And the reason I do that is largely so you can get in and get a head start on your Bill Porter plan, which is your capstone assignment for the class. That's the one you're going to upload to your ePortfolio. So you can look ahead to that, and I know some of you have kind of end of summer vacations that are going on, and you can get ahead to in your work. So I'm okay if you work ahead. That's fine. Just keep checking and keep posting and participating with your classmates. Make sure that everything is done by August 19th, including your email to me saying, Dave, here's where I'm at with my ePortfolio. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later, so don't worry. So it's getting a little cloudy out here, so but whether it rains or not, we are going forward. Oh, I did check with Viterbo about the checklist. Some of you had emailed me saying you'll go to a checklist item and all of a sudden it'll say like this is due January 24th or something like that. When Viterbo, their tech support went in, they were seeing the same thing I was seeing, which was the correct dates, although last night I did go in through the student view and I did have it come up once as an incorrect date. They said it's strictly something to do with the software, the way that it pulls the dates when a course is migrated. So really don't worry about that. It's very rare that you'd ever see that. I think they're going to try to remedy it on their end, but it happens in other classes too, so I was like, whew, not just me. It's very minor though. But what I'm going to do, so if you do come in on your checklist and you see as long as you go into the Moodle module and you use the checklist that I posted there, that'll always have the correct dates. But for some reason, again, some ways if you access it from outside or a different article and you come back to it, it might show up with a date of January or something like that. But what I'm going to do is for modules 1 through 4, I'm going to give everybody full credit on your checklist. Just because I know there was some confusion with that, and I don't think anybody should have to lose a point or a half point or whatever because of something like that. So everyone gets full credit. But for modules 5, 6, and 7, you need to make sure that you go in and you complete your checklist. So could use the sunglasses right now, but the sun actually feels good. Be interesting. All right, that is the Ghostbusters alert. So. I'm pretty good though, because I do believe the rest of the Ghostbusters are on duty today, so I'm off. When I watched Ghostbusters in the studio in 1984 when it originally came out, and shortly afterwards I built a Ghostbusters bike. So I took a 10-speed bike and completely re-engineered it and built up braces in the front platform, and it was awesome. I ordered red lights for it, and the way I had to do it was to go through J.C. Whitney catalog, which is a parts catalog, and I knew my parents would never go for this. So I got a mail order or postal from the post office, whatever that's called. So So the post office then, sent the money in, and all of a sudden these 2 red lights arrive at the house. Actually, parents didn't say much about it at that point. So I rigged these up on the front of my bike, and then I had a CB radio, and then I had like a Ghostbusters backpack that my friend Gerald and I had crafted, which actually was pretty cool, in the back, and then all of these electronics that were hooked up to it. It was phenomenal. I had this entire board I wired, and I was like 12, 13 at the time. I was 12. So it's pretty elaborate to wire this thing up as a 12-year-old to like disassemble existing lights and wire them all into different switches. So I took it up. We had a ballpark a block away, and when I took it up, everybody thought it was awesome. Like it was just the center of attention. There was a problem with it though. To operate the Ghostbusters bike, I needed to take many of those bike generators. I don't know if they're so common now, but back in the day, you had generators that you could hook on the back from your bike, and you could click them, and they would rub against the wheel. And every time the wheel would spin, it powered generator. Well, I took probably like 4 or 5 generators, maybe 6, and I had them all over my wheels. So every time my bike was moving, which was then hard to move the bike, and the tires didn't last long, but it would generate power. So, to run a lot of this stuff that wasn't running off battery, I had it all powered through the bike, which was just crazy. But here's the story of the end of the Ghostbusters bike. It was short-lived. I do have a picture somewhere of it. I lived on in a town that had a steep hill for Main Street, and I was coming down Main Street with my Ghostbusters bike, with a whole audience cheering me on, and all of a sudden I realized that as I kicked in all the electrical systems, that the bike itself became electrified. So as I'm trying to grab the metal brakes, I'm getting, 10,000 volts put through my body. So you couldn't touch anything. I mean, back then, it wasn't this composite material, whatever. It was like steel. So every time I tried to brake, I'd get shocked, and so I couldn't do that. And then the bike itself, it was unbelievable. So it just took over this whole electric. I mean, it was kind of like the Philadelphia project. I didn't know if I was going to end up in 1928 or something like that. But the bike then kind of, just with the weight and the momentum, lost control of it, wiped it out near the bottom of the hill, which then went into this long extended bridge. But that was the end. It was too much to replace and rebuild it, so I took it apart. But yes, I'll never forget that. And one of my friends was watching it, and he'll say, "I'll never forget that time you were coming down and like you were just, your eyes are wide open, and every time you touched the brakes, this thing would just shock you." So pretty cool for the 12-year-old to develop that, but then also the massive pitfalls of doing that too. But Ghostbusters. So my short-lived time as a Ghostbuster. So yeah, anyway, that list issue, don't worry about it. If you see some snapshots, if you can take some screenshots of it and send it to me, I'll send it to Viterbo. But it's something they're working on, and there's really nothing I can do about it at this point. And it has no effect really on anything. So let's get right into shout-outs. I have 5 shout-outs. Shannon, you mentioned common planning time, and how you seem to get off task when everybody gets together for common planning time. Of course that happens. I was in the Hudson School District a few years ago. We took a group of teachers over who were looking at their schedule, elementary schedule, and we observed a common planning time meeting. And what they did is they said the same thing, like we would get off task and talk about other things, and not that it wasn't productive, it just wasn't productive for that purpose. So their principal, they worked together, put together an agenda for their common planning time, and then someone ran the agenda and made sure to stick to all the agenda items. Someone else took notes, and then afterwards, I don't know if it was the person that took notes or somebody else, met with the principal within a day or two to do like a 3 to 5 minute debriefing, and then turn in like a copy of this note sheet. And then of course, that was accountability. Also, the teachers, when we talked to them, they said, it made us feel good because we knew the principal was vested in it then. It just wasn't something that we were supposed to do during this time. And staying to task. We were very efficient. I think they maybe had it 2 times a week for 30 minutes or maybe 40. But we watched one of them, and yeah, it was very well done, but they needed to come up with an agenda, and you could not divert from the agenda. So, but Shannon, so thanks for bringing that up, and I think hopefully I gave an idea there of a way to get common planning time back on track. Emily, the value of game playing, so important, and my daughters love playing games, and all kinds of games, whether it be board games or outside. Not so much into video games. That was me when I was young, and also not as young, but you're right. You mentioned everything, teaching turn taking. You can teach money through that. Strategy. Minecraft is a good example too of now like an online version of a game where you can go in and strategize and how you use your resources and so forth. My oldest daughter will be 10 coming up in a few weeks, and she had a friend over at the end of the school year, and very terrific friend who we enjoy having over, and my daughter got out Monopoly and was playing with her friend, and her friend had never played Monopoly before, so my daughter was teaching her, and my daughter's in 4th grade, and actually this girl had said, we don't play really any board games of any type. So she was interested. My daughter taught her, but it is one of those things where I used games a lot when I was doing a lot of my instruction. Not so much now, just because I work with a population that's visually impaired. Not that I still don't use games, but so yeah. Thanks a lot for bringing that up. I don't think there's anything wrong with games in the classroom, as long as they're just not for pure entertainment. But those are important when it's rainy, when everybody's inside, or when it's 20 below. So, Erin, first of all, you had so much in your post about Circle for Courage. Just a wonderful, detailed post. Thank you for the Play-Doh link. Thank you for the snapshots that you took of purposeful talk, and you discussed anchor points. And I really, really, really like the poster that talked about, poster doesn't talk apparently, but disagreeing, how to disagree, and then how to question authority. And you used it as a closed activity, so you gave students leader statements and then let them put in their own to complete that. And that is so important and such a powerful skill to teach. I did research on the Youth Code of Silence at UW-Madison. It was an independent course that I put together at the very end of my doctoral program before I took on my field study. And what I found time and time again in studies was really not that youth were apathetic or not, as we think, they're just not into their environment and they're kind of all centered on themselves. What the youth were saying is, hey, we don't have a right to vote. No one is really listening to us. We have things imposed upon us, and when school rules happen, we're not part of making the school rules. The other part that was important, too, is they said no one is really listening. They felt a disjuncture. Now, this isn't, I guess that's kind of a global statement, but saying, you know what, if we have rules about bullying and respect, and then a student is being bullied in respect, and the principal sees it and nothing is done, or a teacher, then, why should I report it the next time? Or now I know, I guess it's not as important to the adult as what I thought it was, even though it's important, to me and to other students. So I do think another part that you brought out is students tend to back themselves into the corner. I mentioned this before, and adults do this too. You say something that you believe might be true at the moment, or it's how you feel at the moment. There was a study done at UW-Madison. I knew the researchers, but it was on Twitter, and it was certain times of the day, and like 11:30 at night, 1:30 in the morning. Things you tweet out, would you go back and would you not tweet those like the next day if you had a choice? Most people are like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done it, or I would have done it in different words. And just because it's so they're not really thinking through, and the ones that's out there, instead of necessarily apologizing or trying to redact it or whatever, or retract it, people dig their positions in. And it was the same thing years ago, with the Earth is round, versus the Earth is flat. The first few people had said, no, the Earth probably might be round. They were like stoned to death and ridiculed, and of course it's flat. And I remember reading about Jonas Salk, who of course did the vaccine for polio, and he was young at the time, very young scientist. And the other scientists, the older ones, a lot of them tried to discredit him. And that's actually my hot water heater, which vents out the side of the house. But they would try to discredit him. They would try to discredit him and his research, even when more and more evidence was mounting that his research was solid and in good footing. They chose to discredit him versus change their position and say, you know what, we have more information now, and in light of the new information, we're going to change our position. I'm going to change my position. And I think that's a good thing to teach kids, and I've used that a lot too. Even when I consult, I'll say, based upon whatever I've learned since the last time I've been here, or looking more through your materials, I'm changing my position on whatever. And I think that shows a real growth in a student to be able to do that. And I think you also give a safe way out of that for the student to do that if you say, if the student uses phrases such as, in looking at a broader picture of information, I didn't have all this information available to me at the time I made the decision, and now I'd like to reconsider that. Here's the decision I'm making. So, Toni, your circle of courage. Your question, do we all need to be well-rounded? You said that was a question that was asked or when you were in college, or it was something that was being a philosophy, that we all need to be well-rounded. You have to be well-rounded. Well, you're going to see a video in week 7 by Marcus Buckingham, and Marcus Buckingham will tell you, no, you don't have to be well-rounded. What happens is everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. He points it out in his video, so I'll just paraphrase it, but you have your strengths, and what happens typically is you'll shave off these strengths and try to then take that time and put it down to improve your weaknesses. So really what happens is you just kind of get to this level. Instead of, you know what, I'm really good at this. This is my passion, so I'm going to put more into this, and I'm going to boost this up. And hopefully, what you have down here will start to move up too. But don't sacrifice this for this. And I think that is so important. And we do send that message, I think, the way sometimes that report cards come out and the way that report cards are conveyed, even to kids and to adults. But it's like, if you have a student and the student is excellent, outstanding at absolutely one thing, but maybe struggles at a few other areas, make sure you celebrate this. Don't say, well, they've mastered that, so instead of putting any more time into this, let's put the time down here. It's like the report card. A child comes home with 4 A's and 1 D. What's the response of the parent going to be? It's going to be, why did you have the D versus, all right, 4 A's. So, my neighbor's not mowing, but my neighbor one over is mowing. So anyway, you brought up the Montessori school approach, really through experiential learning. That was big after World War II. And there was a word for that which I cannot remember at this moment. It was Italian, but wasn't Montessori, it had something else to do with that. But that approach is growing again because people are seeing that kids need to learn by experiencing, by setting up environments, where you have, where you are playing the store owner and putting things in your shelves and what you're going to order and how you're going to pretend to play with another student, or your building station, other things, versus having very, very rote instruction on, okay, here's your piece of paper, here's your line, here's how to hold a scissor, this is what we want. So different philosophies, but yeah, I mean, if we look over time, people figure things out, especially if you put them through good universal design, which we'll talk about in Module 6. So thanks for sharing that and the information about Montessori. You talk about well-rounded. One more thing I wanted to talk about is, it's ironic because on the porch, I don't have a grill out here. I've never been a grilling out type of guy. I actually bought a hibachi once on closeout, and after I assembled it together and cooked my first thing on it, it basically disintegrated and fell apart. So, but I'm not, it's just not me. That's just not what I do. And one of my friends was saying, that's really weird, you're not kind of well-rounded. You don't do that. And I was like, I'm well-rounded. I do a lot of things. I bike and hike and read and hang out with people and things. And I'm like, but I don't grill. It's just something we never really did growing up. And I'm not that I'm anti-grilling, but I just don't grill. But it was this missing piece of, you don't grill, so you're not well-rounded. And so that kind of bothered me for a while. I'm like, oh geez, should I go out and get a grill? Am I not fitting in with the neighborhood here? What's the deal? And I remember listening to a famous presenter and watching him present. And he said, at night he comes home and he and his wife basically stay home, kind of homebodies, and they have a smaller home. He was a very popular national presenter, older gentleman, and he said his neighbors and relatives would say, is everything okay? Why aren't you getting out? And why aren't you doing this or going here? And he said, we like it. We designed the house the way we wanted, the decor, we read, we watch some TV, I can do some woodworking in my shop. I like hanging out here. I'm on the road all the other time, this is, and he couldn't get over how everybody else thought, almost felt sorry for him that they were trapped in this house, and he said, that's not the way it is at all. So I'm just saying what well-rounded is. I think you're absolutely right that it's okay. It should be embraced if you have certain strength areas and areas that aren't as strong, to say this is fine. We don't have to be. You don't have to be well-rounded. What does that really mean? So, Carrie, your mission statement of respect, continue respect, is very redundant in the statement, which is very, very good. I like that. Yeah, humor too, and I posted on that because I think what's happening in schools today is there's an effort to sanitize schools of humor. And even though it's in a lot of mission statements, it seems like it's almost viewed as being disrespectful, especially when staff show a little bit of humor. Not all the time, but I've seen it more than I've seen it in the past. And I think it's a shame, because I think humor is something that it's natural, it's growth. I think we need to reflect upon ourselves and what we do with some humor, and to see humor in our environments. Not making fun of other people, but to see the humor in things. Like, there's a tree back there, and I put a circle of bricks around it years ago, and when I put it in, I didn't realize there was there's a large root that's coming out on one side. So, like, no matter what I did, when I got done, the brick pattern looked goofy because I had to work around those roots. So basically, I kind of laughed at it and said, well, tree wins, so let the root there, just going to build the bricks. So it's the way it is now. close-up of it still doesn't look the greatest, but from here it looks good. So a story, and I think it's relevant, is years and years ago, I worked with a teacher, a high school teacher, who told me this factual story, and it was in Wisconsin. She taught students emotional behavioral disabilities, probably mental health, whatever, but this is like 25 years ago. And what we consider some of our hardcore kids, and that a lot of teachers couldn't reach, but this teacher could reach them, and it was through respect. I mean, she demonstrated respect. They gave it back. One time in the middle of winter, she went out and couldn't get her car started. I don't know if it was toward the end of the school day, or if it was at the end of the school day, or over lunch or whatever. But anyway, it ended up it was a dead battery, and she didn't live close by, and it's 10 degrees below zero or whatever. To kind of move the story along, she's sharing this with her students because she's kind of upset about it, and has to get a plan to how she's going to get home and get this resolved with the car. It doesn't have a lot of time. And then like a class hour later, one of her students talks to her and says, "I think your car's okay." And she went out and it started right up. What she didn't realize until a day or two later is that the students took her battery and swapped it out with the battery that was in the driver's ed car, which was parked inside of the area where the shop was on the high school. So they just swapped out the batteries. So then I don't know if the driver's ed car didn't work after that or whatever. But they did that because they were concerned about her safety and they wanted her to get home. And they told her that after the fact, a day or two. And she went to the administrator and said, we have some options here. We could come down and punish and have consequences, or recognize this wasn't the way to handle this situation, but there really was no harm in this. There was no damage done. The teacher said, I'll pay for the battery, for the vehicle, for the school vehicle, and talk with my students, and the principal agreed, which was cool. But imagine that. But that is because of the respect level that they had for her. I doubt they would have done, and she said, I doubt they would have done that for anybody else, because they just didn't feel that. But I mean, she knew about their lives, or she would bring in, a snack for them in the morning, or crackers, or sit down and listen to them, or if she, saw a sweatshirt that was marked down, she might just bring it in and say, hey, had this at home, and for a student that might not have something. But you hit it on the head with respect, and respect is it does become mutual. And again, too many times, we say it's a bad, not a bad generation, but like the millennials switch jobs every year and aren't serious about things. And I don't know about what we say about today's generation, but what they were saying about generations back in the time of Plato, I think Plato himself wrote that, we're doomed because the next generation isn't going to be able to carry on the civic duties and so forth. And it's just a myopic view we have of when we were young, this is the way things were, and they were right. So Module 5. So Module 5 is August 1st through the 7th. We talk about co-teaching, teach and assist, station teaching, and some other aspects of co-teaching. One of the things with teach and assist is I see a lot of co-teaching models that are pseudo-co-teaching. What they really are is a regular education teacher providing the instruction, a special education teacher present in the classroom helping students with disabilities, or maybe just helping students in general, almost serving as an aid type role. And that's probably more prevalent. I think as you post on this, I'm going to read that too, because I read that in most of the classes. People say, yeah, co-teaching really is more or less the regular education teacher teaching, the special education teacher being there helping students with disabilities stay in the regular education classroom. So we're talking about real co-teaching, where each of the teachers is viewed as a teacher, and each of the teachers delivers some portion of the instruction. I have a rubric in the syllabus about co-teaching, and I think it indicates it's tied to an assignment, but it is not tied to an assignment. The reason that the rubric is there is just to help you. We have a discussion question in Module 5 that talks about co-teaching and using and the different models. The rubric is there to just help you with some language you might want to use in describing what you see at your school for co-teaching or teach and assist or stationary or station teaching. So don't worry about that rubric as far as being tied to any assignment that is going to be, the rubric's going to be used for. It's just there as a resource. So, wow, good. But that's where we're at. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, if not all of you, it's summer, Dave. So you're asking me to talk to teachers, and you know, I think there's a scavenger hunt assignment talking to teachers, asking about co-teaching and teach and assist. You're going to have to do the best you can with that. So maybe even some peers in this class, some teachers back in your school, you might have some in-service that are starting by now. If you're not currently teaching, then you can either embellish on what you would like to see at your next site, what you experienced when you were in school, what you had seen at other schools, what happens at your kid's school, whatever. And I also tell people, that teach in parochial schools, embellish on some of this stuff, because more parochial schools are taking students with disabilities. I'm on our church committee, and I know that's a discussion. And I do know schools, parochial schools, that previously, didn't serve students with disabilities, who now have their staff trained in autism, behavior, learning disabilities, and are taking in more students with disabilities. So, but anyway, when you get to that assignment, please don't email me saying, I don't know who to contact about this. Get creative on that. It falls this time of year. So, and again, by that time, in-services will probably be rolling in. Common planning time in Module 5. Question with common planning time. So when you're answering your questions that are your threads, common planning time, is it just, for example, all second grade teachers get together, or is it second grade teachers plus the special education teacher that serves second grade students, or special education teachers, reading specialists? Who all gets together? What really constitutes common planning time, as far as what do you do? How often do you have it? And who's involved? And if people aren't there, how does information get to them? Or how does their information get to that discussion? So common planning time, when it does happen in schools, frequently happens without special education teachers being present at the table, because common planning time might happen during the same hour for 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, but yet there might be one special education teacher that's serving all of that population. So just tell me how it happens, what that looks like, how it works, how it doesn't work, how it might work, how you could fix it. And also, maybe talk about your professional learning communities, if you have those. Do people mix those up for common planning time? In my perception, common planning time is to put together curriculum. Professional learning community is to analyze student data and to then make decisions on common assessments, things like that. And then also to bring new information kind of into the group, like if there's things that our staff have acquired at workshops or something like that. But they're separate things. And again, I've observed where people have used professional learning community time really as common planning time. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, because there's only so much time in a day. And but I think to stay as genuine as you can to these items, it's the best way to be, and to try to stay true to that and recalibrate if you get off course. Schedules, I've talked about it before, but schedules are not set in stone. Here are 2 stones. Neither has a schedule on them. Well, this one does. Okay, but this one does not. So, no, of course it didn't have a schedule on it. But you can change schedules, and if you get people on board, visit some places. It's hard with turnover in administration, but it can be done, and it's done actually quite frequently. And you look at your priorities and say, what are our priorities? Well, our priority is common planning time. Like, that's going to be our number one. So then you issue your priorities and you build your schedule around that. And it'll work. It'll work. There's many, many models for schedules out there. So if you're not satisfied with common planning time, be an agent for change in your school. At least maybe you can start a discussion about it. Is anybody interested? Or could we even have, like a steering committee to talk about this? Could we visit another school that runs a different schedule? Go to Hudson, Wisconsin. That's an awesome elementary schedule for common planning time and for RTI, actually. And you can start these things small. Sometimes people roll these things out so big, that's a mistake. Start small as a pilot. If you're working with co-teaching, if it hasn't been there, common planning time, things like that. Yeah, get it where it's small, maybe it's done at one building, one grade level, whatever you can do, and then expand it from there. When things get rolled out too big, they're too hard to track, and I think they freak people out. So again, start at a manageable level, even if it's, for example, people that have never co-taught. What I say is, just find 2 people that want to co-teach to come forward, or have had some experience in the past, because those people are they want to do this versus forcing 2 people to co-teach. So again, start small, and then hopefully other people will see it and say, hey, that's looks pretty cool, and it'll spark from there. So I can feel part of me is in the sun. Again, I don't know how this video will turn out. I'll probably have this really bizarre suntan going on here, but does feel good. Nice breeze back here. Module 6, August 8th through the 14th. Spend the emphasis of that on universal design for learning. And basically it's just talking about ways to design your instruction so you're capitalizing on different ways that students can express that they understand what you're teaching. And also that they can not only be visual learners, but auditory, tactile, sensory, that you're capitalizing on the senses. When I start to teach visually impaired students and blind children, which is the correct terminology, not children that are blind students, 70% of typical learning is done through visual input. So when you lose visual input, your instruction needs to change a lot. And I really became, I thought, a very good verbal teacher as far as how I would verbally describe, and then also very tactile, and then using even the sense as far as how different things smell and stuff like that. Using concepts such as heavy and light as far as weights and distances and things. But I start to talk about these things, and we put together PowerPoints and whatever. Well, when I do an opening day safety presentation, which I'll be doing for our staff at Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, 3-4 weeks, PowerPoint isn't that effective when probably half our staff are either blind or visually impaired. So I need to make sure I'm using universal design for learning when I'm instructing, when I'm doing those in-services. An example, universal design for learning, it comes in that same thread as, if you build a ramp on the edge of a sidewalk, the ramp is easier for people with wheelchairs to navigate, but also people with strollers, bicycles, people pulling wagons, things like that, shopping carts, whatever it be. But so it's one of these things that it benefits everybody. And then in Japan right now, when they build sidewalks, they have a groove down the center of the sidewalk, And that's made for visually impaired people for canes to know where the center of the sidewalk is. And just think of, all of the things that we take for granted now that are just kind of automatically constructed into buildings, the way we push button and entrances and so forth. Bathrooms. But as we get to curriculum, now we get curriculums, and instead of just getting a textbook, you get maybe the textbook, but you also get the CD to go with it, or the access to the online materials, and you can go on and the computer can read it. So you can have the text-to-voice software. So there's many modes that you can get input from this information. So if something's flying around, if I get stung here and take off, so bees everywhere, bees in the car. So which movie is that from? But I think we're okay, although I have stuff pollinating over here apparently. Universal design for learning. Here's an example. When I was a director, we had an initiative to make our students aware, or increase allergy awareness in our elementary schools. And part of that had to do with hand washing, making sure that students were washing their hands before they would go to lunch, because sanitizer itself does not work with like peanut allergens, for example. So I worked with our at-risk teacher, and here's what our at-risk teacher did as far as universal design for learning with her class of maybe a dozen students. And these are high school students, probably like ages 16 through 20. So what they did is they decided to research allergy. And so they went online, interviewed people, brought along camcorders, tape recorders, whatever, talked to relatives that had allergies. I think they went to Walgreens, which wasn't that far away, and talked to a pharmacist about allergies. So learned about allergies, and then they took down and worked together on what were the main points that they learned. So some people presented that verbally. They did it in even a skit type presentation. They used whether it would be an auditory, an auditory presentation that they would give. They could write something down. I'm just saying there were many ways that they could do this. They had, even demonstrating it out. Somebody brought in like an orange and an old EpiPen and was showing just, here's, if somebody has a reaction, here's what they look like. They showed a picture, and here's like how to use an EpiPen. But they were demonstrating learning. So the way that the teacher designed this was very, very divergent. But yet we tend to design lesson plans convergent, so we have kind of common planning, and we can make sure we're all getting the same thing, because that's what the state kind of looks for in testing. But this was very divergent. So students kind of broke off into groups and then came together and at the very end for kind of this master presentation. But so that was awesome. Then the students decided that this is the way that they were going to do it. The task that they had was they needed to have some way that they were going to go to each of the elementary schools and do a presentation in the classroom to teach kids about hand washing and how that's related to allergy, alleviating the likelihood of an allergic reaction in the lunchroom. So, washing hands before and afterwards. So they put together this skit. They put together a skit. They filmed it. They rehearsed it. They filmed it. They gave it live to the school board and to other teachers that were assembled. And then they actually recorded a video that was 60 seconds long, which was the ABC song, and they showed each of them doing something, and little clips of them hand washing. But that was how long you had to be in washing your hands. But they made this outstanding, very professional video, and it was really, really powerful. But then they took this skit and they gave this skit at all of the different classrooms across the elementary. And it was maybe 5-10 minutes long. But then take this as the next step. Working with their teacher, one of the students found out that you could buy a black light And if you put your hands under this black light after washing it would show you areas that still had bacteria that you need to wash. So mention this to the teacher, and they found a feasible black light. They purchased it. So when they went to the schools, they had each of the students go through the bathroom, and after they were done washing, they came out and they had this area that was dark, and they put their hands under and they had the black light, and they could see if they had how clean their hands were. So amazing. And imagine if you're like a first, second, third grader and you're getting to see that. It's like, whoa. So, oh, you got to go back in. You didn't get, like the thumbs or whatever. But the science that was involved in that, that's universal design for learning. And every student, kind of contributed to that in their own way. But it would have been very easy for the teacher to say, I want you to research this, and I want you to do a paper on it. So just think of all the different aspects that went into that. Understanding, the use of technology and where to position cameras and voice, and understanding which questions to ask people, which questions not to ask, how to use a search engine, how to interact with younger kids, how to evaluate if they're getting your point or not. Understanding how to, new technology that might augment your presentation. So just a wonderful, wonderful example. I'll never forget it. Module 7, we're getting toward the end here. August 15th through the 19th. It's a short week. It ends on a Friday. And please, 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 make sure that you have everything in on Friday. If you turn your bill porter plan in ahead of time, that's awesome. But it needs to be in on Friday. I need to get grades turned around and back to Viterbo in a very short time. So, and some of you also, need your grade report to turn into your district. And I know that involves, having to do with compensation and some aspects there. So please, please, please get everything in by the 19th. And it's very rare that anyone runs over on a class, but it does hold up everything when that happens. So look and plan accordingly. I talked about Marcus Buckingham. You'll meet him in week 7. I'm going to talk about the bill porter plan last and end it with that. But the ePortfolio, go back at the beginning, scroll down in the modules, and you'll see where I have the ePortfolio. You're probably familiar with this if this isn't your first course. If you're taking this for reading licensure. So if you're just taking this course because you need a course for some credits, then the ePortfolio likely doesn't apply to you. But if you're taking this for reading licensure, your ePortfolio, when you're completely done with your licensure program, it's an online portfolio, and again, I have all the information there. It's nothing new, Viterbo, all the classes have this, that do with reading. But you need to go in and present your completed portfolio when you're all done with your reading program to the department chair, and the department chair then will look through and say, yes, this is complete, or no, it's not complete, and then you would have certain things to do to complete it before that would be approved, and then before you'd actually be granted. But yes, you completed the reading licensure program. So for this class, what you're going to upload as your course artifact is going to be your bill porter plan, not the graded one, the one that you submit that's not graded. And I do have a couple examples of the portfolio pages if this is brand new to you. And again, go in and look at the links, how to do this. I will review your ePortfolio. Send me an email to your link. People build these in Weebly. If it's a Google site thing, I usually need access to it, so make sure you give me access to it. But I will go in and I'll give you feedback on it. But I do not grade it. You will not get a grade for this from me. So if it's not done by the end of class, I need you to email me and say, I don't have it done, or it's a work in progress, I'm working on it, or I've got one page of it built, or whatever. Whatever it is, I just need an email from you telling me what the status is. A few classes ago, one of the students emailed me and said, I've never no one's required me to have this totally completed and graded by the end of a specific course. And I said, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just saying this is what Viterbo wants, is strongly encouraging for you to do as much of this, if not hopefully complete your ePortfolio page by the end of the class while everything's still fresh and I can take a look at it and give you feedback. If you complete it down the road, you send me a link to it, I'll give you feedback also. But I have no role in grading it, and you can look in your grade book. It does not impact your grade at any point. So that's the short on that. So you're either going to send me a link, saying, here, it's done and whatever, or a link and say, here, it's a work in progress. This is what I've got done so far. I'm going to be working on the rest in the next few weeks or whatever. So it's not going to hold up me issuing you a grade or anything like that. So just want to make that clear, because it gets, especially people that are early into the reading licensure program, it gets kind of scary what the ePortfolio is and so forth. But hopefully I clarified it. This plant is becoming awfully close to me, where I think it was at least a few feet away at the start of this. So our very end here, the Bill Porter story. So let's talk about that, and then we'll be done. Bill Porter. So first of all, get ready to cry, because it's a moving story. You'll have a link to an online video, ABC 2020 special about Bill Porter, probably filmed about 10 years ago or so. Bill Porter was a door-to-door salesman in Portland, Oregon. He passed away a few years ago, but Bill had cerebral palsy. And he talks about how school was when he was growing up, and how it was just hard. People didn't expect much of him, and then also being ridiculed. And again, that's a different time. And he talks about the natural supports in his current environment that helped him get through as a door-to-door salesman, such as, I think it was a bellhop would either do his necktie or his cuffs. And he had a lady, Shelley Brady, which he hired. And Shelley, actually, her family kind of almost became like Bill's adopted grandkids. But anyway, they just looked up to him so much. And she would help him with his orders because it was difficult for him to do some of the writing. But when you watch the Bill Porter story, Bill again is a man in his 60s when this is filmed, and I want you to take everything you know from that video, about 20 minutes, and you're going to take that and put Bill back as either like fourth grader. If you're teaching fourth grade right now, Bill's a fourth grader. Or if you're teaching high school, hey, he's a sophomore. He just started at our school. Whatever you want. Or if it's a private school, we just had a student enroll, and his name is Bill. So you can put him at anything you want. Or if you're a specialist, Bill enrolled. I am already a title teacher, but the principal asked me if I would be part of a team working with the classroom teacher to help the school become aware of what cerebral palsy is, staff and students, and help acclimate Bill. So you don't have to get into citations on these things. I don't need a reference page. So don't worry about that. Don't really worry too much about APA style. I want you to write this as if it will be. It's going to be a narrative. However you choose to do it, but it's going to be a story format. Here's how a lot of them will start. And I'll tell you, people will email me afterwards and say they love the assignment. And just dive into it. So you know what? Okay, I'm a fourth grade teacher, and I was notified that starting this fall, we're having a new student in our school. His name is Bill Porter, and he has cerebral palsy. I don't know much about cerebral palsy because I don't remember a student that we've had at elementary school with CP, although I'm sure we have at some point, but I really don't know, so I've got to learn about that. Here's what I'm going to learn about CP. And then, how are you going to get to know Bill? How are you going to learn about Bill? And not just through the file, not just through learning through the thick file, but how are you going to learn about Bill? Meet Bill. What are you going to look for? How are you going to learn about Bill? How are you going to educate staff about cerebral palsy and what to expect out of Bill? Bill has normal intelligence, so Bill deserves academic rigor, making sure that staff are providing academic rigor for him. And also, staff are going to be anxious, just natural. Students are going to be anxious. How will you work with students so they understand Bill, understand CP, how to interact with Bill? Bill's going to need a lot of wait time for his responses. Talk about the technology that you're going to use, the people you might work with, your technology specialist, your librarian. Your librarian probably has a ton of books on disability awareness, disability education. I can think of one, My Friend Will by Tara Tuchel, probably in your school library. So the resources you're going to use and the different technologies that you might try. So I'm not going to point out something and say like, no. I might say, this probably wouldn't work and here's why, but it's worth a try. Or, this is really a neat idea. Go to Pinterest, go wherever. I don't want anything where you're sitting there saying, we're assigning a full-time aide to Bill, and that's going to be the solution, and everything's going to be fine. No way, not happening. First of all, Bill's very independent, and that would set him back. And second part, that's just not realistic in most school settings. But in this case, it would be absolutely detrimental to Bill to do that. But, do you have steps? Bill's going to get tired. Do you have a long school that he has to walk? How's he going to do the lunchroom? But then during class, how's he going to keep up with reading and turning pages? And how's he going to do his expressive work as far as his writing? Universal design for learning. How might an iPad work for Bill? What apps might you use? Things like that. Follow the rubric and you'll be fine. Follow the rubric, you'll be fine. There's two parts that sometimes people overlook at the end, and then they lose points. And so I want to make sure you don't lose those. So I'm going to bring them up again. The two parts are, one, socially, how will you have Bill interact with other people? How will you create opportunities for social interaction for Bill within the school setting and maybe kind of community? If I understand if Bill's in kindergarten, you don't have a student council, and you might not have Cub Scouts or something like that. But are there other clubs that you have at school? Are there community groups that meet at the library? Things like Lego Club, stuff like that. There's even online clubs. But the other part is, looking at what you have in your community, local park and rec. I'm giving you some right now. But community, some things in the area that might be a resource for Bill, some things in the summer, some things on weekends. And then looking at outside services kind of to help Bill in the moment and more long term. There is a website that I list, which is kind of a clearinghouse, and then your ADRC for your county disability resources for aging and for people with disabilities. So that's another source. But yeah, who would you hopefully have Bill connected with? So as he gets to be 24, 25, 26, he still has connections where he's socially involved, where he's getting services, support at work services or work environment experiences, that he maybe has a job. Who are the people that are going to be involved? And is Bill going to be in the choir? Is Bill going to be, on a sports team? Is he going to be on a frisbee golf team or something like that? Bowling? Who knows? But so again, you can write it any way that you want, but it is meant to be informal. So you don't have to worry about, again, a page of references and a ton of citations. If you have something that you clearly are taking from somewhere, reference it in the paper, like this app, here's the name of this app and here's who makes it. That's fine. That's all I need. And this is why I would use it with Bill. So that's the assignment where everything that we've done in class should come together, because you want to make school an inclusive environment for Bill, the climate, and then also academically inclusive for Bill. And just in closing, this has been long, but I used to work not too far from here. I won't give the place, just a few blocks away, but and we had a gentleman start work. This was, again, years ago. I keep saying years ago. I hear the crickets or cicadas or whatever's going on here. And he started work, and what the secretary did is she bought all these pink flamingos, and she put them along the walkway, steps which went up to the building, and she put them on each side. And we got there in the morning, we thought it was kind of a prank, that somebody had just done this, pink flamingos, whatever. And didn't find out until later that she did that because she wanted him to know where the sides of the walkway were. So this was her way of helping him out. And we actually had a number of things as a staff. One time someone saw him right away, go into the women's bathroom, and then the question was, well, should we tell him he's in the wrong bathroom or not? And so ultimately it was a get-together with him, and I know somebody said, there's a lot of people that have questions, we're glad you're here, but we just haven't had someone who's blind that we've worked with. So we want to ask you some questions about what you want us to do, what you don't want us to do, just so we can get that out of the way, because there's some anxiety. And he was glad to answer those questions. And once that it was done through like a potluck. Once it was done, boom, everything was cool. Everything was fine. Otherwise, people were just anxious. They just didn't know. Am I going to offend him if I tell him that? But yes, the pink flamingos. So, and bottom line, people have good hearts. They're gonna do things to help. So, yes. We will have lived here 14 years as of August 2nd. So, and what we have in back for the very quick tour is, that is actually the end of parkland, and then it widens as it goes down. And we don't have any out here right now, but at certain times we have a lot of snakes in the backyard. They are typically just grass snakes, although some get big. I haven't seen much this year. A few years ago, I remember one day I was out here with my daughter, and we were just picking up snakes, put them in a 5-gallon pail, and toss them back. The neighborhood kids now actually will take sacks, like gunny sacks or old pillowcases, and they'll collect these things, and then one of the moms drives them to a nature preserve just out of town, and they let them go. So, not that they do any harm, they eat the bugs and mosquitoes, and they're fine. So I actually welcome them probably here. So we have a fox that's regularly in our backyard. We have deer. We have cranes that walk through on a pretty regular basis. And right in back of this green area, and it's kind of amazing how that all filled in because there was a pretty good path through there. There's a sledding hill, a really nice sledding hill. Just all we got to do is walk through there and boom, we're right to the hill. So my daughters absolutely love that. So I will have to kind of go in there and get all crazy and knock that down once we get into later October and the mosquitoes and bugs are kind of gone. So we get a path through there again. So just saw a rabbit go over there. Not in the scene, but there's 2 spruce trees over there. And they were small. They were about this big. My dad and I planted them when we moved in. And I think I'll move don't need to move the camera, but they are at least like 20, 25 feet tall right now. It's huge spruce trees. Used to decorate them at Christmas time, but I'm not that daredevil anymore getting those long ladders out. So, but yeah, it's really it's a very peaceful place. Right over here is a screen-in porch, heavy-duty screen. It's pet-proof, and it actually is. They've got cats in there. There's not a rip anywhere in it. And you can imagine just how nice it is to sit out on the porch and to do work, and just to be out there at night too, and turn the light on and do some reading. So right over here will be the campsite for my daughter and for her friends. And I will put a glow stick in their tent, and I don't know if I will do a little monster thing later at night. I don't know if I want to do that and freak them out or not. But we'll see. But yeah, she's looking forward to that. Hopefully she'll have good weather. And there's a way into the house right here, and there's a way into the porch right there. So, again, Purple and gray. I know this probably didn't go together, but this shirt I've had for quite a while, but I know I haven't worn purple during one of our Fireside Chats. I will likely do a few more chats, but they might not be on Wednesday or Thursday, like next week or whatever, because this is kind of the chat from now to the end of the course. This is like the big one. So if there is anything that's a follow-up chat, it's probably like really short. So if you have any questions, email me. Again, as far as the checklist, going forward, make sure you're completing the checklist. I will update grades. Hopefully I'll get that done today in post, but through like week 4, I'll give everybody credit for the checklist. But going through 5, 6, 7, make sure that you go in and do the checklist. If the dates are wonky, the assignments are still the same. And it is a technical issue with Moodle that they're working on. So it's strange because years ago I taught people how to use Blackboard at Viterbo. I would drive over in summer and teach veteran faculty. They would hire me of how to use Blackboard, and I've used virtually every format that's out there to teach online in the last 15 years. But so I'm sitting here saying, why can't I figure this out? So, well, on behalf of myself and this notepad, this tree or this bush, it's not a cactus, I don't know what it is, and my grill-less porch and my tomato plant, I wish you a good day. It's beautiful out here. It's very nice breeze. Very nice breeze. We have wonderful neighbors all around us, and our neighbors right over here, they had a tree just recently removed, and we had a couple trees removed, but there was a tree that was on our property, like the one back here, big, and they asked us, they said, do you mind, we'll take that tree out too, because, and I said, well, so like, while you're, how much do I owe you, or how are we going to do this? And they're like, we'll just pay for it, and I think it's like $500,000 to take down the tree, so appreciate it. Thanks. It was well over on our property line. So they're awesome. They're awesome, awesome people. So it's good to live in a neighborhood like this where everybody helps out everybody. So take care. Enjoy the last few weeks of summer. I feel like I've had a really good summer. I always feel a little sad this time of year that it's ending. And I think that's coupled with the fact that my daughters have birthdays very close together over the next couple of weeks, and it's just they get a year older. I remember walking my second grader to and from school, and now fifth grader and very independent. But yeah. But I'm looking forward to returning too. So, any questions? Get a hold of me and enjoy life. You've been a great class. You've really been a great class. Your posts, we are so blessed in Wisconsin to have educators of your quality, of your passion. And I wish I could print off the posts that you make and just take your names off and get them down to the state capitol and just say, look at this stuff. Look how amazing these people are. Just how brilliant, how passionate, how creative. You are. It's such an honor to be teaching at this level and to be teaching, frankly, all of you in this class. So, all right. Thanks. And by the way, I'm just going to move us over here a little bit to give you the grand tour since I talked about it. But right over there, those are those spruce trees that my dad and I planted, and they came in little tiny buckets, and they were probably a foot tall, just little scrawny things, and now they're at least 25 feet tall, I would say. And then we have parkland. Let's see here that you can kind of see goes back there, and eventually there's some playground equipment. And then if you scroll down here, you can see way down there, that's the bottom of the sledding hill, but our neighbors built a baseball diamond down there. Actually got permission from the city, paid for it themselves, had some drainage tile put in. You can't really see it too much from here because the backstop and stuff is out of view, but it actually has an infield and there's bases, and that's a city lot, and that was just done out of the generosity of some of our neighbors. So just really cool. So there's our privacy fence. On the other side are my super awesome neighbors who paid to take that tree down for us. So, and I will just close with our flower garden. When we moved here, this backyard was virtually dead. It's very sandy here in Portage, and we got it to kind of come back pretty well. So it's not my flower garden, really. My wife takes care of that, but we expanded that out. So she's happy that the deer haven't eaten everything up this year. So, all right, that ends the official tour. So everybody, take care.